You're a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I'm very fond of you.
Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I'm your host, Josh Scar, and joining me as always is my co-host, Alex. Alex, what you up to? How you doing?
I'm excited. My neighbors took the day today to put up their inflatable army, both of them. If you ever need to come to my house, we don't have street lights or anything, and if it's in the months between October and December, we always just say, hey, if you see the inflatable army, you've gone two houses too far. They were up for October and Halloween. They were up for Thanksgiving. They're now up for the holidays. And when I say army, they don't have a very big yard. It's maybe, I don't know, 30 across, 10, 20 deep maybe to the front door. And there are about 35, 40 inflatables. And they're tall.
That's too many. That's too many.
The next door neighbor is getting in on the action too. And so they have maybe 12. It's great. We get so happy. We're like, they're up, the inflatables. Because every year, 2 or 3 more get added. It's so good. What about yourself, Josh?
I'm doing all right. Happy holidays, everyone. One thing I realized, literally just as we were about to record this episode, we're timing this pretty well with the War of the Rohirrim anime that's coming out. That comes out next week. Or no, that comes out today. That is out today as this episode airs. This unfortunately is not a review of the War of Rohirrim episode or movie because we recorded this episode in advance. I don't know if you know how time works. We're not sitting at our computers waiting for you to hit play and then running our episode live for you.
I am.
Just a little peek behind the curtain for you. Everyone that's not me or Alex. But these are episodes are pre-recorded. We have not seen the War for the Rohirrim yet. Depending on how things go, maybe we'll do an episode on that eventually, if not sooner rather than later. I am very curious about it. I don't think the art style of the anime really appeals to me. It feels very stock footage anime. But I mean, I'm always interested in Lord of the Rings stuff, and they're taking a swing with a Lord of the Rings anime.
I'm so torn because the way my head processes information, like I can get a really bad headache if to me the quality of the animation doesn't match the smoothness of it. Like the Lego movies, especially the first one. The way that they do, like it's stop motion, so the frame rate isn't as slow on the Legos as they're like moving, but with that brilliantly crisp CGI, it just gives me a headache.
I can see that
because my head's going, this is clear, it's not, it's clear, it's not, it's clear, and for an hour and a half. But this anime, it almost looks like it's too few frames because I watch a lot of anime. I know that the little tricks that they do to make they hold they hold like a still cells, but they move over it while somebody's talking, so it looks like there's movement, but there's not because they're saving money and stuff. But and then they used they put the really big money into the action sequences. It almost looks like they're trying to do that, but I don't know if I can stand a Lord of the Rings anime style movie where it's beautiful and clear, but until there's an action sequence, everyone's what is your joke? 4 frames per second pigeon or whatever.
I think that's Joey's. Yeah, the game called Pod Boys, 4 frames per second pigeon. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm curious just to see how they translate it because we were all pretty pleasantly surprised by Star Wars Visions, but that's all a bunch of mini episodes. They're all like 12 to 20-minute episodes, and they're not connected in any way. It's just standalone stories that are inspired by Star Wars. Where this is taking from Star Wars or Lord of the Rings lore and adapting it into a new medium, which I think is fantastic. Again, take big swings, try do new things. But this one, it comes out of nowhere, other than the fact that maybe they're just trying to keep the IP fresh. I don't know. But Alex, I do have one thing that we really need to touch on real quick, which thankfully these episodes are only going out 2 days apart. I realized that we completely forgot to talk about Gandalf in the Desolation of Smaug episode and the subplot with Thorin's dad that happens with that.
Oh yeah, that Gandalf for the second franchise in a row gets his ass kicked by a more powerful wizard and imprisoned.
Yeah,
And we've
but
touched on it.
they also create like a weird, really quick subplot of like reminding us that Thorin's dad is just like he went missing. He didn't die during the battle where Thorin got his fancy last name of Oakenshield. His dad just went missing, and then they pay that off where he became some weird animalistic thrall for the necromancer, and then immediately uh Gandalf healed him, and then he died. And that doesn't come up in this movie, which I'm also just realizing. Like, it's a plot point that means nothing other than satisfying a thread that they created within the same movie. Because Gandalf never has a moment with Thorin where he can be like, "Hey, I saw your dad. He said, I love you, son."
That would have been great. Thorin's having his final moments with Bilbo instead of the rest of the dwarves, which I still don't like. And Gandalf just kind of sneaks over on screen during those last like little shudder breaths. He goes, "Oh, psst, psst, Thorin, I saw your dad, and he was evil, but I healed him. He's dead now. Anyways, right before he died, he said, 'I love you, son,' but he was talking to me, not you. Okay, cool. You can die now."
I'm your brother, by the way.
Exactly. That would be great. Oh.
Okay. So there we caught up on missing plot threads because there is a moment at some point that we have to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. Like, there's so much in this movie I don't want to talk about, but that sequence especially I don't want to. But much in the taste of what we are doing with this movie today, we're gonna go hear from our friends over at I Hate It, Let's Watch It, and we'll be right back to talk about the Battle of the Five Armies, The Hobbit Part 3.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Dawn.
And if you've ever watched a TV show and thought to yourself, oh my god, that season finale plot twist was absolutely bonkers,
Or seen a movie and thought, wow, I need to talk to somebody about this train wreck immediately.
then we think you'll fit right in with our podcast, I Hate It, Let's Watch It. We watch TV shows like Riverdale and Emily in Paris.
And movies like Deep Water, Killer Sofa, Rubber, and Deadly Illusions. And we give them the total rinsing they deserve.
It's basically group therapy for movie masochists. So come check us out wherever you stream podcasts.
I still think Riverdale gets a bad rap from them. I mean, maybe it's more like from their perspective, they hate it because a lot of people like Emily in Paris as well. So I don't know. But yeah, so I don't want to belay this discussion too long. This movie just starts off so strong with, the best part of the previous movie, and that's Stephen Fry and Ryan Gage as the master of Town Lake, whatever you want to call it, and not Grima Wormtongue, Alfred Limpdick. Yeah, just a choice to go like, you guys like these Harry Potter villains, right? Let's bring them back immediately and remind you how much you love to hate these characters, because we're pretty sure they're going to be like the pink lady from the Harry Potter movies that Josh can't remember the names of.
Oh, crap. Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge.
That's right. I also
Yeah.
don't care because the Harry Potter franchise can just go rot in a fire for all I care. We're here to talk about the Master of Lake Town and Alfred Limpdick, played by Ryan Cage. Smaug v. Lake Town. We talked about it last time. We said it was like maybe 20 minutes. It is 12 minutes into the movie. It's not even that really. I think it's like 11 minutes and 52 seconds or something like that from beginning to end, from the time that sequence starts.
Wow.
Which is, I think it's further proof that they knew they had nothing with this film, and they just stretched out a sequence from the Desolation of Smaug a year to pad out the front end of this movie.
I never knew I needed a Saving Private Ryan style beginning to a Lord of the Rings show or movie, and I still don't need a same Brian. The when it is just doing the fantasy thing of ooh explosions, danger, crying and screams and blah 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 blah, it's okay. I mean, it looks beautiful. It is well done. It reminds you of the Nazgul fight from Return of the King. You know, it reminds you of all those things. It is beautifully done. It is invigorating and terrifying. Once that stops for a brief moment, you do get the yay, we killed the dragon, and there's cheering and rejoicing, and it does feel good because Smaug is gone. And then the tonal dissonance happens of bodies in the river, men and women crying, dead children, the carnage afterwards. And I'm just sitting here going, they didn't do this after, they didn't do this after the Battle of Helm's Deep. They didn't do this after the Battle of the White City. They didn't do this after the ghosts came through. They didn't linger on this crap when they marched up to the Black Tower. They briefly had a moment of it with Treebeard, but it's goddamn trees. I knew these from acorn and sapling. We feel for it because yay, Treebeard's cute. Yay, Treebeard. And then they kick ass, and they take things out. It is so bizarre to go from Riddles in the Dark to Thief in the Shadows to seeing dead women and children and crying. And that to me, I'm like, this is not a Hobbit movie. This is not a kid's book. This is weird. This is very uncomfortable, and it gets worse from there.
It suffers very heavily from the fact that Smaug is either very inefficient with his fire, which again carries over from the previous movie where they set him up to be this extraordinarily intelligent dragon, and now all of a sudden he's just an idiot. But Lake Town doesn't seem to be that big where he would need to make more than maybe 3 passes to just engulf the entire town in fire. And then you would think he would just like go back and deal with the dwarves. But instead he's going to like make like 18 passes and then give Bard enough time to climb a tower and shoot some arrows. And I have to deviate for a second because I don't know if it's what's Peter Jackson's partner's name, Philippa
Boyens.
Okay.
Philippa Boyens
I,
and Fran
I
Walsh.
believe she is Scottish in heritage. So maybe this is something she put into the film. But the kids, Bard's kids calling Bard Da. And again, this is maybe just the American in me. Like maybe this is like my deep, dark American. But them calling him Da bothers me to no end. I'm like, you're grown ass kids. Don't say Da. That I don't know what it is about that phrase, but it like triggered something in me where I was just like, no child says this. Especially when you have a very British dad. I do know that the kid that plays Bane, his son, is also he is a Scottish actor. He appears in the Outlander series. He's a series regular in that show. And I know they say da in that show too. And it bothers me there too. The grown-up daughter of the two leads, she calls him da. And I'm just like, I don't care that it's a dialect thing. I don't care that it's apparently just like a thing in Scottish culture. It sounds it's like nails on a chalkboard to my American ears, and I don't like it. I don't like grown ass people calling their dad da, which again, maybe that's a cultural thing. I'm not trying to say what you're doing is dumb. I'm not trying to say that it's something you need to stop. I just don't think it should be in a mass produced movie or TV show where a grown ass person is saying da. It just sounds weird and off putting to me. Tangent over. I'm not even going to put Star Wars in because this is just me and my preferences trying, like, just bubbling over. But yeah, Smaug is not smart in any sense of the word in these sequences. Like, he is
Nope.
beautiful. He is still a great looking character, but he's weirdly vindictive for no reason. Like, I know he like blames the Lake Town people for helping the dwarves get there, and he's just like made this weird connection of like, oh, the people of Lake Town, they're the reason you're even here. I'm gonna go burn that town and make sure every last one of them dies before coming back and dealing with you. And it all just, none of it feels authentic. Like, it doesn't feel real. And then, like, I know Bard has thrown a couple of arrows at him, but like with his dragon hide, like, does he feel that? And then he just like stops it. He's just like, what are you gonna do, bowman? Like, he's just taunting him and berating him. And then Bane shows up with the black arrow, which, like, that sequence was kind of cool because in the book it's kind of unceremonious where they're like, oh, and by the way, Bard shot down Smaug and Smaug died and the village of Lake Town was saved. Hooray. Like, this kind of like plays it up into more of an action sequence, but you're right, it is very off-putting with how visceral it is compared to everything else that the book laid out to that point, as well as what the movies have shown us to this point. Like, yeah, we're dealing with a dragon and dragon fire, but there's ways around it where you can make it a little bit more all ages appropriate. I know this movie gets an R rating, which I'm sure this sequence lays into it, but that's also kind of an affront to what Tolkien created with this book.
Yeah, very weird because you don't get a triumphant feeling, which is something you expect from cinema like this. And almost immediately, it goes from the destruction of Smaug to the kind of like splitting up of the treasure kind of thing, where like the dwarves like, cool, that's handled. We're gonna like pile back to the Lonely Mountain, and then the people are moving out of the city, and there's confusion, and you don't really get a moment to rest of like, is this part of the plan? Because we're just barreling forward, and because we know, thanks to Gandalf, that an army is coming to march on them, so they're very quickly just setting the pieces for that. To which we then cut to Gandalf, who is still imprisoned and being tortured. Which, by the way, I do not need to have 2 movies in a row of old man Ian McKellen, the poor guy, being told to, by the way, you're being tortured? Okay, scream in pain. A little bit more, please. I just hated all that stuff. And then, the full reveal of the necromancer. I'm not even sure that I liked Galadriel.
I hated
doing her-
Galadriel doing her thing. That sequence, she sounds drunk. She doesn't sound powerful. She doesn't sound like she's like fighting anything. She just sounds like she has had a few too many and she's calling her ex-boyfriend on the phone. You have no power here.
It's very
You
odd
don't
because
even know. You're you, and I'm me, and I'm gonna do my thing, and you're not even gonna get it. You're not even gonna get here. I'm tired.
you're starting to sound a little bit like Pete Holmes as Batman.
Yeah, that whole sequence, again, too long, and it's not effective. I did note that Gandalf's torturer, he's actually in a costume. Like, that is a legitimate costume and person in a suit that Ian McKellen is interacting with. So like that's cool. And then you want to talk about a scene with zero stakes, the Council of Light versus the Nazgul.
Yep.
There's absolutely no weight in execution and in meaning. Like, there's nothing that scene accomplishes other than adding in a little bit of an extra action set piece.
Yep. And I know the reason why they didn't had Galadriel do her whole thing is because they needed to do a callback to it. Instead of a dark lord, you'll have a dark queen and blah blah blah, and all shall love it. it doesn't work the same. And
Because you don't even know.
I don't know what the direction was to like, hey, Galadriel, you need to bring back Gandalf. But I really, really need it to seem like you love him and that your whispers are just going to make him go, wait, we're going to get married if I come back? What's this? She likes me?
It has a lot of Team America vibes. Like, I could never have sex with you because you'll die. You would have to promise me that you'll never die. I promise I will never die.
I know. Really expected her just to like, pull a Neo from Reloaded. Oh, Gandalf, you can't die. I just love you too damn much. It's such a it's so weird. It's like she's floating down on him, like floating above him, very Ghostbusters 1-ish.
Zero stakes, and then it sets up Saruman's partnership with Sauron. It doesn't need to happen. Because Gandalf fucks off once they're at the border of Lothlorien in the book, and isn't heard from again until Bilbo wakes up after the Battle of the Five Armies. And like, what else is happening? Well, we need to fill in the gaps because it's a Lord of the Rings movie. We can't just have him disappear forever and then just magically reappear, because that's not interesting narratively. Which if you play the movie properly, it's fine. You don't need it. It's not necessary. Other than the fact that they do the prequel thing where they give Gandalf his staff that we know and love that he has, and it sets up a few more things going forward, but it doesn't serve any greater purpose for the narrative being told. So like, what's the point?
Oh man, you reminded me that his staff is from Radagast, and I remember looking at that going like, why did that why did that need to happen? Like, what is the purpose of this?
Because they wanted Radagast to say Dickie.
You're not wrong. Oh jeez. Oh.
So this movie did do something to me that I did not expect it to do, and that is, I kind of grew to appreciate Ryan Gage's performance as Alfred, the not Wormtongue guy. I do think he's in the movie for too long, but he's such a transparently evil sidekick guy that, again, because he's too much in the movie and it's too obvious that they're trying to make you think that he's Wormtongue, and you're trying to just hate him because he's Wormtongue, or a Wormtongue like character. But again, he doesn't fit in these movies. Neither does the Master of Lake Town, played by Stephen Fry. Neither of those characters belong in these movies because they're complete anomalies to the characterizations that we've seen before. But I actually kind of came to appreciate what Ryan Gage did in this movie with the performance he gave. And that kind of rippled out into me appreciating more of like just the acting in general in these movies, which we'll get into because we're going to kind of like, what did we take away from watching all three of these movies in such close succession? We'll get into that a little bit more. I do have a note in here that just says, LOL. Bard says, winter is upon us while standing in a lush green field. and like it, I was really curious in the post Smaug attack, because we see in the Desolation of Smaug, Bard's like navigating through, he's doing like the ice trials from Avatar The Last Airbender, that the Southern Water Tribe does, where they're like, oh, look out for the icebergs. He's like, I grew up on these waters, I know these icebergs like the back of my hand. And like, you can't know icebergs like the back of your hand because they're icebergs. They will change over time and they're not going to be there all the time. But in this case, the fact that we went from this like cold, drab winter in Lake Town to this lush green field just on the other side of the river or the lake, and then he's like, oh, winter's here, we need to find shelter, don't mind the green grass. That's it's just warm because of the fire. Like, I don't know what's happening, but I remember sitting there thinking, that grass is very green. Weren't they just in winter and navigating through a river of ice? And then they go and stand in a beautiful green field. And he goes,
Yeah.
winter is coming. Winter is here. We need to, we can't camp here because it's cold. Not that it, just trust us.
So to briefly go back to Alfred Swallowspit.
Alfred Limptick, yeah.
Yeah, he did actually provide some levity, because to me the entire sequence of trying to hide during the battles, I was really hoping that the gags would just get more and more absurd. Because he pulls a cow from Titanic, Billy Zane, at one point, where he's like pretending to be like like a woman and like wanting to get rid of this.
That's
And
where
then-
I was trying to find that relation. Is like, what, I've seen this kind of cowardice before, but I don't remember where.
And then at other points, and I did appreciate it, because unceremoniously Wormtug kind of gets offed. Okay, that's fine. But this way, they really drag this guy through the dirt. They just show you how cowardly, and I was really hoping to just kind of keep going, like to get worse and worse. Of like he had, he like on the fly, he was coming up with more and more shtick to try. Instead, we only got like 2. I was hoping for like 4. But I liked it.
I think it's more just that both the Master of Lake Town and Alfred, I don't feel like their comeuppance works the way that the movie hopes it does, because the Master of Lake Town is just crushed by Smaug's corpse after Smaug does like a dramatic fly up to the sky, and then he just gets squashed under a boat between the water and Smaug. And then later on, when Alfred dies, he gets Jack Sparrowed into a thing's mouth, except he doesn't live. And that's kind of it. Like,
Yeah.
and then the troll throws up his coins that he was trying to steal, which, like, where did those coins come from?
So you can't even call it a face heel turn. When Thorin Oakenshield goes from bad guy of the first movie to not really bad guy to kind of bad guy in the second movie to full dick bad guy in the third movie, does it work for you, or is it just like, yep, we already had this?
You must have seen my notes, because the very next note I have is Thorin's moments of levity feel more like the sickness than when he's cranky. He's always been cranky. He's always been ornery. We've never seen him be friendly with anyone in his company. Like he's said like, oh, you're my friend, you're my brothers, you're my family, we're kin, we're whatever. Like he rallies them by bringing up their sense of kinship, but he doesn't ever like engage with them in a way that we see that they enjoy each other's company. They just seem to have like this fealty to him because he's next in line to the throne. When they sing the fun songs, Thorin's not around. When they sing the theme song, the Misty Mountains song, it's very somber, it's very macabre, and he's there. Like the mood never lightens when he's around. The mood is always very serious. And so when he's having that moment with Bilbo where he's just kind of like, it's a gift for a friend. I love you, my friend. We are so good together. Don't worry about marrying anyone else because we're just going to be together. Like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's weird. And not because he's like trying to be like Samwise to his Frodo. It's because we've never seen this from him before. And like, yes, he's overcompensating because of the dragon sickness and whatnot. But again, when he's being nice, that's when it feels weird.
Yeah, it's weird because they're trying to have Boromir's dad again. The whole kind of mentally ill, making irrational decisions, can't be reasoned with. But it never feels quite right because he already has been a jerk in the first movie and then forgiven, and then he's been it in the second. So the more that they keep calling, oh, he's got the dragon sickness, it's getting him, it doesn't really come off in a convincing way that I believe he has gotten worse. Because frankly, if I had a friend who knew I was looking for a Star Wars action figure, that it was mine, that was somewhere in this house, and then that my Star Wars action figure was then brought to me by one of my sworn enemies as a way of exchanging for the rest of the contents of my damn house, I'd be pissed at my friend too. Because that's not the deal. The deal is not like, well, it was my 114th. No, I'm sorry. The Arkenstone was never part of the 114th, dude. We know this.
I wish I had the Darth Vader like pray I don't negotiate, pray I don't change the deal any further.
Yeah. Like, I get it. I do believe that he is being highly irresponsible by his party of 12 against all the Dame Elves in the entire forest. But we're going to hold the Lonely Mountain. That is that it doesn't work for me. Now the dream sequence that gets him out of it, that was freaking cool.
I like that a lot. That created like a weird headcanon for me of like that's how dragons are actually made or born, is that people come down with dragon sickness and they can either like succumb to it and then they become a dragon based on like their level of greed, they become like the fire drakes or whatever, or they their moral compass takes over and they're like, "Oh my god, I'm sick. I need to break this fever somehow," and they get better and they like learn and become better people for it. Like that sequence was really good. I like that a lot. I really did also appreciate the sequence where when Bilbo's kind of piecing together that like, oh yeah, he does have dragon sickness even though he's been told like 3 or 4 times, and he's also tried to prevent the Keeley company from entering the mountain because he's like, you need to leave like now because he's off, like something is not right with him. But like when Thorin says like I will not part with a single coin, and they overlap the Smaug line with his line and they match it up, I was like, that's good. I like that a lot.
But then beyond that, like it just becomes fighting, and I'm not sure I quite understand who the hell the other dwarf lord is that rides up.
Oh, Dane, Ironfoot.
Yeah, there's all excited about like my whirly birds fired into the air. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, that's Thorin's cousin, who I guess is
Okay.
also maybe sort of in line for the throne. And Gandalf has kind of been like bouncing between the two of them, trying to figure out who he's going to give the key to.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that Billy Connolly gets some lines, but immediately I'm like, are you here just to like suggest you're like
He is
like
a CGI monstrosity.
Yeah, are you like a steampunk dwarf? Is that what we're going with now? Because I don't know what these whirly things are. Though I mean, immediately it looks kind of cool, but at the same time, the excitement of like, look at him. It's like I saw. Okay, and now you guys are all gonna get your asses kicked. I'm sorry.
The anti-arrow ballistas I thought were really cool, but in execution for the film, I don't know that I'm ever going to go back and rewatch this one. They show the ballistas twice.
Yeah.
And I think after the first one, you hear like a thud and a scream, but they never show them land and they never show them on the battlefield again. So I'm like, where did they go? What happened here?
To which this does actually get to what I was saying. I was having problems with tone because the orcs end up attacking the city, which is when we get some of the shenanigans with Alfred.
I do also find it really annoying that of the 5 armies, 2 of them are orc armies. They're just from different locations.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's 5. Like, is it really though? Like they have the same aim, whereas you have the other 3 who all have their own motivations.
Yeah. But it bothers me because when they're attacking the city, it's again women and children screaming, being cut down. The orcs are. It felt like again to say Saving Private Ryan, but the end of the Saving Private Ryan where the city's being attacked and there's like the cowardly people curled up in the corner and the Nazis are like stabbing some of the soldiers and it's very uncomfortable. That's what it started to feel like. I'm like, I don't need this much of a war movie in the middle of my riddle movie, in the middle of my Beef in the Dark movie. This is too real. Like when you take this last movie and you try to compare it to anything from Lord of the Rings, that to me is a children's story compared to what we're getting in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, and then ghosts are gonna show up and save the day, guys. It's like, okay, but what were you doing, Bilbo? I was watching women and children being slaughtered before my eyes by armies of orcs. Oh, oh, and by the way, they're elephants in our film. They're really, really big. What about you guys? You won't believe this one had a monstrosity that was attacking and just savaging us. There was a dragon burning us alive. Your story sucks, Frodo.
Yeah, there are a handful of things in this one that just like don't sit well with me, just either visually or narratively. Because there's the moment where they breach the wall going into the town that's just outside of the Lonely Mountain. I'm forgetting. Is it Dale? I feel
Yeah,
like that's right.
it is.
So like they send a giant troll up with like a little hat to like ram a wall. And my note is it's a good thing the kamikaze troll had enough life left in him to comedically fall over and die instead of plugging up the hole he just created, because that would probably be what happened if it killed him, is he would just go limp in the hole,
Yeah.
which no one wants to do, but especially sorry, it's late for me. I'm tired, and some saucy jokes might sneak out here and there. But before the battle starts, I do have to say, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit, when Bilbo sneaks away to bring the Arkenstone over to Thranduil and Bard.
Yeah.
I love Beaufort. Beaufort didn't get enough to do in the last movie, and his goodbye Bilbo is so sweet and heartfelt and warm.
Yeah.
It's so good. He knows Bilbo so well.
He does.
I
It's so
just
sweet.
Beaufort's the best. I had to call him out for that real quick. And then I also
Yeah.
did a couple timestamps here. So the war starts at around an hour and 15 minutes on the extended edition.
Oh God.
There's an hour and 28 minutes still to go at that point.
Wow.
And there's maybe 15 minutes of the Lord of the Rings multiple ending sort of stuff that we have there.
Jeez.
But I got curious at a certain point, because I had to watch this in sequences because it couldn't hold my attention legitimately. Like, it's just so padded. It's just hard to feel the impact of anything when everyone and everything is just a CGI monstrosity. And that leads me to my other thing I want to talk about with like these battles and like how horrific some of this stuff is. I think they just recycled the same orc for like three different, or troll for three different pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one or troll that has had like its eyelids sewn shut and all four limbs chopped off,
Mm-hmm.
and a mount strapped to its back,
Mm-hmm.
and it's steered by an orc pulling on its eyelids to just kind of make it swing wildly in whatever direction it's being pulled. And legitimately, I'm like, that poor troll. That
Yeah,
is horrific. Like, for the most part, the trolls are just like organically evil things in these movies.
Right.
They're just evil, and that's what they are. Okay, I can live with that. But like, this thing has been tortured, just completely destroyed, and I can't think of the proper word for it, but like it just it's pitiful. And the only thing I felt in these sequences was that poor troll. Like,
Yeah.
nothing deserves to be treated that way.
No, I think part of it is that when they were making the original trilogy, because the orcs on screen were people, people in makeup and stuff like that, and they had to go through and you would get like the visual inspection check of like, yes, use this one, oh, this is too far and stuff like this. But when you're just going pure CGI and just adding more and more stuff through, I don't feel as if there's just as much quality check. Like somebody was sitting there going like, okay, in our movie we have this. What is this? like somebody like I don't know if they like did a sculpt or whatever, but somebody did not look at that and go, that might be a little bit much, guys. Can't we just like have him like holding his ear, holding the orc ears and tugging them to move or something? Like, I mean, even in Star Wars, the whole was it not Banshee, the giant thingy that Boba Fett rides. That thing was not as tortured as this guy.
Oh, the Rancor, yeah.
The Rancor, yes.
Yeah, the
And
Rancor is basically just like a Mustang. Like you
Yeah.
break it and it allows you to ride it.
yeah, like nobody was being nice to this orc. It was just it's being tortured. I mean, even in Return of the Jedi, when that Rancor got killed, it's that little chubby guy. He cried. Even with Luke was walking by, he's crying. So I don't. There's a lot of viciousness in this one, and I don't know if there was like a quality issue. I don't know if it was just a tone issue where like the tone on set and then at Weta and all the people doing the graphics was just like, get this done, push it through. We're all in a bad mood here. I mean, maybe it literally is Christmas vacation. What can I say, Clark? It's the holidays and we're all miserable. Now, on the opposite end, when Thranduil rolls on up with his battle elk, God, I love it.
I at least appreciate that they justified its existence a couple of times in the movie. I still don't think it's just another CGI monstrosity in this monstrosity of a movie.
It makes me so happy because I'm like, yeah, Leaface, you got a battle elk. Good on you, boy. But that does bring up one of my two most hated lines in this movie. Again, Thranduil is telling Toriel, it's not real. Get over the dwarf. Yeah, and he says like, it's not real. You don't understand real love and real pain, blah, blah, blah. And at the end where handsome dwarf is dying, because of course can't have happiness in this movie at all. And she's there crying and she asks, why does she ask him? Of all people, is there not like
because he had character growth? His son, he just told his son to go find Strider, and everyone's feeling good because he's like, oh, we know what that means. And now all of a sudden he's had growth because, and that's the thing I was talking about last time, where Thranduil has been a dick to Legolas the entire time, to the point where Legolas has basically banished himself because he knows he can't marry Tauriel because his dad won't allow it. She doesn't love him. And Tauriel's also been banished from Lothlorien. So they have a little heart to heart where Legolas is like, I'm not coming home. I'm gonna like go find who I am and blah blah blah. And they have this moment where Thranduil is like, oh, go find this ranger. He goes by Strider, but you have to figure out his real name, even though I basically already told you his real name because I told you his father's name, which is Arathorn, and you've been alive long enough that you should know Arathorn is the father of Aragorn. But mystic bullshit and whatever. Also, your mother loved you very much, but fuck off. Like, what kind of what line? Who wrote that line where he can't say, I love you, son? I love you. What is this bullshit that Thranduil is going through that he just has to like put a little dagger in Legolas and be like, hey, Legolas, your mom that you're like broken up about and has like damaged you as a person because of her untimely death, because we're elves and we lived for so long and she died relatively young as an elf. She loved you. Does that make you feel better? Are you feeling okay now? Your unrequited love is still unrequited. You're telling me you don't want to come back home. I'm telling you to go on a side quest. Your mom loved you. You know that, right?
It's the same writer has poor Toriel crying over the dwarf and saying like, what is this feeling? Why does this hurt? And then he goes, because it's real. I mean, I understand that line is actually supposed to mean something, right? Because
it's the poetry thing we talked about last time too. It's the George Lucas. It's poetry. It rhymes. He told her it's not real, but now he realizes it was because it looks like what he went through when Legolas's mother died. Blah blah blah.
I'm just sitting there thinking, like, is that the best take of that line? Because, when you have people like Alan Rickman who can make lines in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, like, you 9 o'clock, you 9:15, bring a friend. They can make that work, but they can't make a crying love scene work with
So
emotion.
we also need to backtrack like
Ugh.
3 minutes from that sequence because I have a note here that says kissing a corpse is gross, Tauriel.
Nah.
He dies. He's been dead for a long time at this point in the movie. Like he dies in her arms and then like a whole bunch of other shit happens and then we come back to this and she's still just crying over him, which like fine, cool. Or he's your Romeo to your Juliet, whatever. And then she kisses him. He's been dead for a while. Like a little gross on the lips. Like you kiss on the forehead, whatever. Like, okay, but he's been dead a while at this point, and she kisses him right on the lips.
He's the most conventionally attractive of the dwarfs. It's okay.
Of the corpses, I guess.
The corpses of the other dwarfs. It's okay, Josh. It's just a movie. Love hurts.
So, on the flip side of this, while I know this is something you alluded to as something that bothered you, Thorin's last rites and his conversation with Bilbo as he's dying, I genuinely was like, this is good. This is his
Yes.
redemption moment. This is what like the movie has been making us try to feel, but it hasn't been able to get us to feel anything. But like now when he's like, if people valued home more than they did gold, the world would be a merrier place. And he's realizing this. That is a beautiful moment in a shitty movie.
Mhm.
And like I do think genuinely like the funeral moment and all that stuff, other than Bilbo trying to ditch his best friend Bofer without saying goodbye, is a dick move.
Yep.
He has this nice moment with Dwalin or Balin, I can't remember which one it is. It's the old guy. But he's like, "Oh, just tell them all I said bye. I'm not good at goodbyes. I'm just gonna go now." And old dwarf is like, "Oh, you can tell him yourself." And Bofer is there, like the good best friend that he is, and he's like, "We love you, Bilbo. Thank you so much for helping us get our home." And like that is a good moment. It's not quite my friends, you bow to no one, but it's for what this movie is and what these movies are. That is a good moment. It's something where I was like, I like this. And Martin Freeman nails everything that he does in these movies. And
Mhm.
Bofer nails everything he does in these movies,
Yeah.
even except for the stone giants, the legends are true bullshit from the
Yeah.
first movie. I genuinely think that there is a lot of stuff towards the end of this movie where I'm like, this is a good payoff. The
Yeah.
buildup doesn't work, but I see where you're going with this.
Right. And to get to the end, with Bilbo, with Gandalf walking Bilbo back to the Shire, and he tells him, "Listen, that ring you have, blah 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 blah," and Bilbo's like, "No, I lost it when I was going across the fields and all that stuff." I liked that moment. I mean, we know it's not true, obviously, but I liked it, and I liked, we got the return home with him yelling at all the people trying to auction off his house, and he gets into his house and he's kind of like settling in, like, I'm home, everything's happened, and you hear that score start to come in, and he reaches into his pocket, and his pocket is the ring, and he's not surprised by it. He lied about it because the ring, he's worn it so many times in these movies, and he's used it for so many things that, yes, he's going to be possessive, yes, he's going to tell Gandalf to fuck off, but that fade of the hand from Martin Freeman's hands to old Bilbo's hand, that worked for me. And then the whole, I don't want any more well-wishers and all that crap. And you hear Gandalf being like, "What about very old friends?" Taking the beginning, well, actually not the beginning. It's more like 15 minutes into Lord of the Rings, But the
It's a
introduction
cheap
of Bilbo,
dopamine hit that the movie's trying to get out of us.
it works though, man. It does.
It works because it accomplishes what it wants to.
Yeah.
But I think it's a real cheap dopamine hit where
Yeah.
because I think it's partly because they do the whole the Sackville Bagginses are like auctioning off his wares and his home to try and make a quick cheap buck, and then they also like add one more time because like they need to remind everyone that even though Thorin was an asshole for 99.8% of the movie until he was on his deathbed or death sheet of ice, he was a dick. Bilbo liked him, and they needed to make
Yeah.
sure we were reminded a handful more times before the end of the movie.
The movie probably would have been stronger if it ended with Bilbo pulling the ring out of his pocket and just kind of trailing off with the music. And then, then you can just, the movie ends, you pop in the first disc of Lord of the Rings, and you just pick on through, and it just flows into it. Gandalf 60 something years later finally swings back and he's like, wait a second, there's a ring. I think that could have worked a little bit better, but I know it's cheap and terrible, but that we don't see Gandalf, we don't see Frodo, that we just get that dialogue from the first movie and Bilbo's reaction from inside. It's the alternate view that works for me. I don't want the movie to have ended with Thorin on a sheet of ice. Though that could have actually worked too. That actually would have been funny. It just ends. And then it cuts to, I want adventure, Gandalf. It's like, are you sure? The last time we had an adventure, you're an asshole to Beaufort who is still ride or die and asks about you. Last time
you don't answer his letters, Bilbo. Like what the hell?
Yeah. And didn't you come home and your shit was being auctioned off?
He named his firstborn son after you, Bilbo, and yet you don't. What are you doing over here? I don't know if that's true or if that's in the appendices. That's my headcanon though.
Speaking of which, we get a random Gimli name drop. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, that was in Desolation of Smaug, I thought.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, because they were like taking all their stuff before they put him in their prison cells. He's like, "What is this? Some kind of troll?" He's like, "It's my son Gimli." And Legolas is like, "I'll put that in the back of my head. Sounds like a good life mate opportunity."
Because Lord knows I won't touch Toriel. She smells. She's a peasant elf. God damn it.
No, he's the one that wants to touch her. It's his dad that he doesn't want him touching her.
I don't know. I still think that he doesn't even realize.
He doesn't even.
I think his dad's just making shit up.
There's a really old meme cycle from like the late 2000s, leading in like the 2010s after the Lord of the Rings extendeds had come out, where there was just like this meme cycle of Legolas being dense and not understanding things. And there's one that I remember so vividly where they were like, the other members of the Fellowship don't think I understand what irony means, which is ironic because we were riding horses at the time. And the joke being he literally does not understand irony because it's a non sequitur to nothing. So Alex,
stupid.
But we had started these episodes like, where were we when we were getting ready to see these movies? This one coming out in 2014. I was not excited for this one. After I wanted to see how they concluded the Smaug thing. And then after that first 15 minutes, I was like, dear God, when does this end?
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why I didn't ask it. Also, we're going to go into like final thoughts, how we feel about the trilogy after this rewatch. Not like, are we looking forward to any more Lord of the Rings stuff? Because they're still going to push it out because it's an IP that people will still enjoy, especially with trying to figure out how to out Game of Thrones and like the hype that it created. But I have a few notes for my final thoughts that I had written down. I legitimately think you can see where people, mainly the acting cast and the crew on set, were excited to be part of like another Lord of the Rings production. And the only ones that like really phoned it in were Peter Jackson and the studio. They were just
Yeah.
like, get it made, get it done. I think everyone else, even Weta with like their production designs, I don't think there was like a lot of vetting process, because like we talked about, and like most people know, this movie was basically in pre-production hell for 10 years. And then they just went, Guillermo del Toro's out because he doesn't want to make 3 movies. Peter Jackson, either you do it, or we're just going to hire we're going to get Michael Bay and he's going to make whatever he wants. And Peter Jackson went, okay, well, I guess I'll do this. And oh, by the way, you start filming in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like the only pre-production stuff that they had done was that they were building the Shire again.
Yeah.
Everything else was basically being done in concert while they were filming, which it was not what they did with the original Lord of the Rings. I think like pre-production had started like 1997, 1998, and then they started filming in 2000 so that they could get, or late 1999 going into the year 2000, and then they edited and got it out in late 2001 for the first film, and that got them enough money where they could go back and do some reshoots and recontextualizing. But this one had none of that, because they were like, it's going to make $1 billion no matter what. Just CGI it. That's what everyone's doing. It's cheaper and we can do it faster.
The costuming, the physical costuming really works well. The difference in the dwarves, I think there's just too many. I didn't bother learning the names, but they're distinct. You could tell there was passion to try to like recreate it. That there was just a tonal issue of get it done, move quickly. And I think that's when a lot of random stuff slipped through the cracks, like, you know, your tortured orc. And my issue with like, did he not, you know, did Jackson not look at some of the stuff and go, isn't this a little rough? This is a little rougher than I want this to be. You know, I know we called the Desolation of Smaug, but I mean, do we need to show some of this? Do we need to do some of this? Does the battle need to be, you know, an hour and 20 minutes? Do we need to have Legolas, Mario jumping from falling brick to falling brick? There's just, the tone and the inconsistencies didn't work. I do believe that somewhere in there, if someone can just sneak into Wingnut Films and just get, you know, the master like 15 hours of footage for all 3 of these, and I think there could be a solid 2-hour cut of this that is lighthearted, that is triumphant, that is fun, that more respects Tolkien's vision, that I think would lead better into Lord of the Rings. Versus when I take this trilogy as a whole, I feel like its objective was not to tell a different version or or more palpable version. I felt like in every stage it was trying to one up, and unfortunately, it one upped it in slog and in random cruelty.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with calling out the tonal disconnect that these movies have, where I do think it's pretty clear that there were 2 scripts that they were just kind of bouncing between, where one was more Lord of the Rings, the other was a dark children's tale, and they just kind of picked and chose what they liked from each of them and just mashed it together into this monstrosity. I do have a couple more things, like again, going through this movie and the performances that come out of this, when it's not just CGI monstrosities clashing into each other and pixels clashing into pixels.
Yeah.
I think the actors understood their assignments. I think everyone does their parts really well throughout all 3 movies. I don't think that the acting is ever a problem. I think it's the tonal disconnect, like we were talking about, like the Master of Lake Town and Alfred, where they're Paddington villains, they're Harry Potter villains. They are not tonally consistent with the Lord of the Rings world. And that pulls you out of it, because it's like, this is something more in line with like an all ages family friendly affair, where this has not been that at all until just now. Yeah. And these guys should not exist in this world, because they're just weird and gross. And but to that point, that's on the script, that's on the directors. I think Stephen Fry, Ryan Cage, I can't remember now, what they were given and what they were told to do, they hit it. They
Mhm.
nailed it. They did what they were supposed to do. It just doesn't work in these movies. I think Evangeline Lilly as Tauriel, I don't think she's bad. She's given bad stuff,
Yeah.
but her performance is what was asked of her, and it's not bad. The
Yeah.
performance is not bad, specifically. Like the role, the script, the scenes, those are bad. They're dumb. The dialogue, dumb.
Yeah.
Legolas, I kind of like brooding Legolas. I think Orlando
Mhm.
Bloom did a good job with brooding, dark, grim Legolas, but he's
Yep.
not needed. He adds nothing to the story. It's just a means for us to kind of connect the dots as to like when Legolas went to go meet Aragorn.
Yep. No, I
Martin
agree.
Freeman, in a better movie, he's probably getting an Oscar nomination.
Mhm.
And, Ian McKellen, better movie, he's probably getting another Oscar nomination. I don't think anyone does anything particularly bad in these movies in terms of acting and performing what is asked of them. And I think that falls on Peter Jackson and the script for just not getting the assignment, or at least trying to copy someone else's homework while making it their own as well. And it just becomes a jumbled mesh of nothing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And then the last thing I want to praise here, I had to write this down because I thought it was a really good line that I came up with last night before going to bed. Howard Shore shines as bright as the light of Valinor in his score of these movies. The score is never not running at 100,000%. Howard Shore, I feel like he wrote these movies without ever actually or wrote the score to these movies without ever watching them. Because
No.
there are some composers where they're like, "Oh, this isn't good."
Mhm.
I've got something laying in the back here that I can just lop onto this. We can record it and it's fine. He didn't phone it in. He brought it with everything that he had and all the love he had for the Middle Earth franchise.
No, completely. There was a period of about, I don't know, 8-9 years where when I would, be, just want epic fantasy music while, writing notes for D&D or getting ready to run a game or something. I would always say, play Lord of the Rings music. And inevitably, some of the Hobbit would peek in there. I'd be like, I don't remember this. Shut this off. Bah, bah. But then rewatching the movies over the last while, I was like, oh, this song, this is good. This, like, I can be listening, hearing it and getting emotion, even though I'm looking at the screen going, well, this is dumb. And yeah, and there it is. It's been sneaking little by little into my playlist, and I'm starting to appreciate it because some of this music is just so good. There's so much good in here. It just is sad that overall, it's just a lesser franchise, a part of the franchise.
Yeah. So my final thoughts that I wrote down: you can't polish a turd, and doing a 3D 48 frames per second 4K production is going to show many of the cracks in the veneer of a visual effects heavy movie. And the trilogy shows why so many studios now grayscale everything in their color palettes, because grayscaling allows you to hide some of the cracks in the armor. And I think The Hobbit is kind of the poster child for, we don't do bright, vibrant CGI anymore. Like, I saw
Yeah.
someone in time of recording this episode, the How to Train Your Dragon trailer came out, and someone pointed out that, yeah, they Marvel scaled the color palette for How to Train Your Dragon, because if you had the animated movie color palette, or even just a natural color palette, Toothless is going to stand out like a sore thumb. Whereas if you grayscale it, make it look a little darker, it hides some of those lines. He looks a little more realistic. The world just looks a little more overcast as a
Yep.
consequence. And I think The Hobbit might be one of the reasons why we have so much of that now.
No, agreed. I mean, that's why if it's a Michael Bay movie, the color palette is orange.
Only if it's in Miami or a tropical location. If it's in an Arctic place, it's blue. Midwest, it's green.
If it's in Mexico, it's brown.
If it's in New York, it's gray.
Hmm. And if it's in Russia, it's snow.
Yep. We've done a must see or pass for the previous two movies. I don't know that there's any saving grace in this final movie. I think the scene where Thorin's last rites, I think, is good. I think that the performances there are, again, that's where I kind of feel like, yeah, these guys they're like, we're in Lord of the Rings. We're in a Lord of the Rings movie. We need to bring it. And they brought it. And I think throughout most of the movies, again, they brought their A game. I'm sure they were like, yeah, we're in Lord of the Rings movies. We got to make sure we're up to snuff. And I don't that's where I think the the actors and the production team, as far as like on set crew, they were all probably really jazzed to be part of this thing. And like, yeah, we'll fix it in post. That's fine. Peter's a little hectic, and like, I think he might be dying. Ian McKellen might need a couple weeks in an asylum, but that's all part of the process, right? Um,
Totally.
I mean, Viggo Mortensen broke his toe in that one scene. Like, did you know that?
Oh, you did? What scene was it?
It was when he kicked the helmet in the second movie.
Oh, oh wow.
There is heart in these movies, and it just sucks that they couldn't deliver on the production and the editing and directing side of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's just true. That's all we got.
Yep. So it's a pass. Look up Thorin's last rites scene on YouTube, but you don't even have to try and find it on Max or whatever streaming platform. Just watch that scene. Watch two actors do some really good acting. But
Yeah.
Alex, let everyone know about our Discord.
If for some reason you're about 15 years younger than us and really love this trilogy and believe it's superior to Lord of the Rings, please let us know by joining our Discord. It's tsmackpod@gmail.com. You can find the link below, and Matt will tell you exactly how wrong you are because he's the defender of our Discord.
And don't forget to find us on all the social media platforms. We are on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. If you are on the aforementioned YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends, do whatever you can to help grow the podcast, because we want more people to engage with us. The whole point of this is to have fun nerd conversations. Email us your thoughts, questions, reviews, interests. If you're a publisher of any kind, aspiring comic or some kind of writer, send us an email. Maybe we can chat. Email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes, Beppo for our avatars, Retro Studios for our Rinky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. Hit that like button on YouTube. Alex, as always, thank you so much for being here. Dear listener, thank you so much for listening. Take care. Watch.
I am too old for this.
Not that.
Watch Star Trek.
Star Trek Into Darkness. It's better than this one.
Oh.
Yeah, that's as far as I'm willing to go with this.